You think about what an experience means in the digital marketplace altogether. It's not just a website or a banner ad like it used to be.
Hi, this is Velocitize Talks, and I'm Eric Jones. I'm here with Todd DeRemigis, the Director of Digital Experience at TBC. Todd, great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about TBC and what makes you special in the marketplace.
TBC is an agency based in Baltimore. We've been around for 45 years. We really like to refer to ourselves as a solutions agency because we do have roots traditional advertising, but we've seen the market grow and evolve over the years, and the range of in-house capabilities and expertise that we have really just provides us a space to be more as a partner for our clients instead of just a service provider. Really, as any of our clients have any sort of business challenges, we're always ready to rise to the occasion, and having all those skill sets in-house means that we can not only think of the idea, but build upon it and execute it and take it to the market and then optimize and always make sure that it's always growing and becoming better. We also have an in-house production capability. So from video standpoint, we've, for the last 45 years, had a groundwork in the TV space, but that also just means that we can roll out a national TV campaign just as easily as we can a social campaign, whether it's paid space or organic content for some clients.
So I'm really curious about your title, actually, Director of Digital Experience. Is that a relatively new title in TBC, or when does it date from?
Yeah, I am the first Director of Digital Experience. With my background is in the design space. So even as I was going through school, I was always leaning a little bit towards the digital space. I mean, design principles are universal, so all of those aspects have always been fundamental in any sort of really marketing or communication experience. But getting into somewhere that we can blend the technical aspects is really where my area of expertise has come. It's for bridging the idea between what a developer can actually execute and what tools are out there, but what the actual goals of what we're trying to accomplish are.
Cool. So tell us what makes for a great digital experience today.
Really just intuitive and clear and engaging. You think about what an experience means in the digital marketplace altogether. It's not just a website or a banner ad like it used to be. The social platforms themselves are so diverse in what that actually means. People use different social networks in vastly different ways. I mean, the idea between how someone uses Facebook versus Instagram versus just Instagram stories is totally different. So the idea of what content you're going to put in there and how you're going to connect that messaging all over, but with the same goals, but the different layers all the way throughout.
Do you think about building digital experiences for different generations differently?
Absolutely.
So like let's take Gen Z. Like what might you do for if you were specifically targeting that demographic differently?
Well, from one standpoint is authenticity for sure. Making sure that the content feels legitimate and it's not just a totally facetious messaging. It's actually what the brand stands for and what their values are. A lot of people connect with whatever the brand's values are, and from a younger generation standpoint, you've seen so many different studies that will always have that same aspect coming up. The other thing is just the attention span. It's always fascinating you see the rise of TikTok, and the idea that Facebook always puts out the 6-second attention span, and then really in the first 3 seconds, that's what people are really only paying attention to. And TikTok is like the epitome of what 6 seconds can actually pack in. That the content in there is so extremely engaging and just slam-packed with information. But then the idea that YouTube has remained as popular as it is, and that is a totally immersive platform that is only video content, and you are absolutely engaging with it. Even if it's passively in the background, there's nothing else you're doing on that website other than watching video content, especially if you think about it from a mobile standpoint. There's really no other opportunity. If you're watching a video on YouTube, then that is what you're doing. So it's always interesting, the willingness to jump in and engage in some sort of content like that, whether it is 6 seconds or it's a 10-minute YouTube video. It's pretty impressive.
So you bring up the topic of speed. We've all seen the various Google studies, like 2 seconds if people are dropping off and things like that. How much of that is a big part of your work, improving the performance of your client sites?
It's a huge aspect of ours. From the standpoint, I mean, our development team is always extremely focused on performance, even if it is at the when we're butting heads with the designers of, well, this is really what we want to get on here. We really want to get this video content and make sure that the messaging and the experience is as beautiful as possible, but when they're focusing on performance, which is extremely crucial, especially in the mobile landscape. When I was coming out of school and responsive design was really just becoming a thing and making sure that you were focusing on getting the same content and hopefully the same experience in a mobile space as you were on the desktop, it's still a challenge that you have today. You see a lot of tools like Google's PWA rolling out, and it's extremely effective. It's extremely functional, but there seems like there's a little bit of gap in what the intended experience was. Some publishers can pull it off a little bit better than other sites, but anything else that you see a little bit optimized, a little bit towards that AMP atmosphere, seems like it's a little bit of a base layer experience compared to the desktop experience.
So that's kind of an interesting thing. You bring up progressive web apps. Tell us where you might use progressive web apps versus an actual developing of an app.
I mean, really, it comes down to whatever the client's goals are. I mean, if it's an information-heavy site, that's something that is probably more suitable to an atmosphere like that. But a lot of our clients and the experiences that we want, it is an extension of a marketing atmosphere. So we want to make sure that from a tracking standpoint, we're all set up on that. And really from a content standpoint, we're leading people down the same pathway that we actually intend them to. From a web app experience, it really just depends on the product also. If it's something that's a little bit more immersive of an online experience as opposed to something you would consider a website, that's really probably the defining barrier.
So DXPs, digital experience platforms, Gartner just officially, recognized this as a Magic Quadrant, I think two or 3 years ago. How do you coach clients to get the most out of their DXP?
Really, there's a lot of client education that goes into all aspects in the digital atmosphere. A lot of what we do in the social space, it's getting people warmed up to the idea of what to expect out of that space in general. You can't just go in with the idea of what your previous misconceptions might be. So a lot of it is just coaching people up with research in the onboarding phase.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the future of the website is?
That's an interesting question because it does feel like it's at a bit of a stalemate in this right now because there's so many other connected experiences to a website, but the endpoint is still a website. In a lot of social campaigns, it's still going to some variation of a website, whether it's a landing page or not. You've seen different Facebook with the instant experiences trying to launch these other products within their platform, but with mixed results. It's always a changing and evolving experience, which is true about the web too. But websites in general, it seems like there might be a shift or an opportunity to go back into that space. I think back to several years ago before social really took over as the main mobile atmosphere. Think about immersive blog networks and it seems like that type of content is being curated again, and there's going to probably be some sort of shift back into whether an expansion of an existing social platform or a new one or back into the web space.
Tell us about how you're, with CCPA and obviously GDPR from last year. How are you balancing the competing interests of privacy versus personalization?
Well, it's an interesting standpoint because a lot of the tracking that we do, a lot of the tools that you use are already working on their own privacy regulations, but we do a lot of media campaigns with everything that we do as an agency. So we are already working with other vendors, and it's that amalgamation of that privacy layer all the way throughout. And a lot of the stuff that we actually do from our client standpoint right now, it hasn't been as much of an issue as you might expect, but it's also something that more regulations and more nuances to laws roll out, it's something of concern for sure.
Yeah. Are you being asked to do more and more data audits for clients and things like that?
We have not been much. I know a couple colleagues and other companies that have had to go through that stuff. And even from Facebook's standpoint of when we've gone through their CCPA presentations and their process, I'm sure it is bulletproof, but it's still pretty rigid right now. And it's if you got 30,000 requests, it would still be some sort of a task to actually get that audit done.
So, Google announced they're doing away with cookies. Tell us how you're beginning to think about that and addressing that from a technical standpoint.
A lot of it is working with our partners proactively and not just waiting until we hit that cutoff date and everyone has that panic at the last minute of the shift has to happen. It's always looking to see what research they're doing, what new approaches they're developing, putting out in the testing space. One of our benefits of the certain media buys that we do is we always do get some early access to certain products. So stuff like that is really the first barrier point to trying to figure this stuff out.
So, we've seen the explosion in various Martech solutions. I'm really curious, what are the emerging hot, cool Martech solutions that you're seeing, nowadays that people are asking to be bolted into their DXPs?
Yeah, I mean, really, a lot of the stuff that we do is in the social space that add on layers of additional marketing campaigns and existing. A lot of the stuff that we've seen an increase in is integration with Amazon and stuff like that, and just making sure that we're integrating into existing marketplaces as much as we possibly can.
So people are choosing to sell still on Amazon. Like, I'm thinking of the Nike situation, right, where they just pulled back. And I think Dyson in certain markets has similarly pulled back versus like building out their own e-commerce platform.
Yeah, I mean, it really becomes down, it's more of a business operations standpoint at that point. Amazon does have all of that access and all that accessibility. You do have to play by their rules, but it also has some sort of credibility and from a frictionless experience. I mean, if consumers are set up on there and are more comfortable buying in that space, then it's less barrier to entry to actually get towards some sort of actual purchase.
So I'm sort of curious, how much work are you seeing in the headless space? Are a lot of clients asking you for, kind of, hey, we want to avoid the problem of replatforming and we want to keep some of our legacy infrastructure, help us to figure out a way forward with headless?
Yeah, it's something we've had a few people approach and something we're looking into as an agency, just because of the versatility and really the idea of not even just transitioning content from another platform, but if there's a better platform that pops out for a specific need, and whether that's just more accessibility or easier to update or integrate into other automation processes, it's an interesting problem that's coming up, not problem, but experience that's coming up that I think probably will gain more headway in the future as stuff just becomes a little bit more decentralized. If you think of all of the services that you personally as a consumer use on the internet and how it integrates into one central location, it seems like the natural progression for a lot of web content.
So you mentioned different platforms for different needs. Of the main ones, how do you think differently about the different platforms? Like, which ones are best suited for which types of needs?
It depends on really the end goal. I mean, if from a marketing standpoint, something that if you can integrate with whatever CRM, that's the obvious solution to make sure that from a business standpoint, those processes are more automated and balanced out. But from a consumer standpoint, it just really the access is probably the main reason there.
Todd, one of the questions we love asking our guests is a book that you'd like to recommend or podcast to our viewers.
Podcast, I've been listening to How I Built It a lot. I always find that origin story aspect interesting. I actually just recently picked up the Netflix book, This Will Never Work, which is just, I haven't gotten a chance to dive into that yet, but it's always fascinating hearing those origin stories of something that seems so obvious in hindsight, but was always a crazy, crazy idea at the outset.
Right. Thanks, Todd.
Thank you.
That was Todd DeRemigis, the Director of Digital Experience at TBC.